Welcome to Capital Catch-Up. I am Victor.
And I am Leanie. Today we are discussing several key legislative developments in Congress, ranging from international trade and defense to national security and domestic reforms. Let us start with international trade. House Resolution 1340 has been introduced to express strong congressional opposition to foreign nations imposing digital services taxes, or DSTs.
This resolution argues that these taxes unfairly discriminate against companies based in the United States by targeting gross revenues instead of net income. The House asserts that these digital services taxes violate established international tax principles, create market distortions, and place an undue burden on American businesses and consumers.
To address this, the resolution endorses previous investigations by the United States Trade Representative. It calls on foreign governments to repeal existing digital services taxes and stop implementing new ones, urging instead a collaborative, multilateral approach through the OECD to handle global digital taxation. It also signals a firm commitment to protecting United States economic interests, even supporting trade enforcement tools, including potential retaliatory measures.
On a related note regarding technology and national security, we have House Resolution 9102, also known as the Biotech Investment National Security Act of 2026. This bill addresses concerns about the transfer of United States capital and pharmaceutical innovation to the People's Republic of China.
Exactly. It seeks to amend the Defense Production Act of 1950 by classifying biotechnology, specifically pharmaceutical development, biologics manufacturing, and related intellectual property as a prohibited or notifiable technology. By doing so, the legislation aims to restrict outbound investments and licensing agreements that could accelerate China's dominance in the global biotechnology supply chain and create strategic dependencies. It also requires the Secretary of Defense to submit a report assessing the impact of these capital flows on United States military readiness and national security.
Speaking of foreign adversaries, Senate Bill 4708, the Arctic Security and Diplomacy Act, aims to counter strategic, military, and espionage threats from the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China in the Arctic region.
There are serious concerns about foreign adversaries using dual-use scientific research, seabed mapping, and infrastructure investments to conduct surveillance and sabotage against critical undersea assets. Senate Bill 4708 mandates a comprehensive strategy to combat this foreign influence. It establishes a strict federal oversight process for all marine scientific research within United States waters and prohibits covered vessels associated with foreign adversaries from conducting such research unless a national interest waiver is granted.
Our security partnerships are also expanding. Senate Bill 4711, the Strategic Unmanned Systems Partnership Act, proposes the establishment of a United States-Ukraine Strategic Defense Innovation Working Group. This group would formalize collaboration on the development, production, and acquisition of unmanned military systems.
It aims to leverage combat-proven Ukrainian technology to enhance United States defense capabilities. This would involve creating frameworks for mutual technology transfers, intellectual property sharing, and reciprocal procurement. High-level defense officials would be tasked with scaling the production of cost-effective, expendable unmanned aerial and underwater vehicles. The working group would have a 5-year mandate and must submit regular progress reports to congressional defense committees.
Meanwhile, in the Indo-Pacific, Senate Resolution 760 commemorates the United States-Philippines alliance. It marks 3 major milestones: the 80th anniversary of diplomatic relations, the 75th anniversary of the Mutual Defense Treaty, and the 10th anniversary of the landmark 2016 arbitral ruling that invalidated China's expansive maritime claims in the South China Sea.
This resolution strongly supports the alliance and explicitly condemns the ongoing aggression, lawfare, and illegal territorial encroachments by the People's Republic of China against Philippine vessels and personnel. It reaffirms that the Mutual Defense Treaty covers attacks on Philippine forces throughout the South China Sea and emphasizes expanding security and economic partnerships, like the Luzon Economic Corridor.
Moving to the Americas, Senate Bill 4809, the Venezuela Democratic Transition Act, formally rejects the legitimacy of the Nicolas Maduro regime following the disputed 2024 presidential election.
The bill mandates that the Secretary of State develop a comprehensive strategy to facilitate a democratic transition, focusing on securing free and fair elections in 2026, supporting the democratic opposition, and releasing political prisoners. It authorizes targeted sanctions, such as asset blocking and visa restrictions, against those complicit in human rights abuses, while providing waivers for humanitarian aid and national security.
Now let us turn to domestic policy and economic security. House Resolution 9227, the Magnets Value Chain Support Act of 2026, addresses our strategic over-reliance on foreign sources, specifically China, for permanent magnets.
These magnets are critical for defense, automotive, robotics, and advanced electronics. To revitalize our domestic industrial base, the bill proposes a tiered system of tax credits for producing rare earth oxides, magnet metals, and finished permanent magnets. Crucially, these financial incentives are tied to domestic manufacturing and exclude materials sourced from prohibited foreign entities.
On the topic of free speech and government accountability, Senate Bill 4749, known as the Jawbone Act, seeks to curb government jawboning. This is the practice where federal agencies or employees coerce private speech intermediaries, like broadcasters, social media platforms, and artificial intelligence providers, to censor or alter content.
The bill establishes a federal cause of action so aggrieved parties can sue government officials for coercive behavior. It also sets criteria to distinguish between legitimate regulatory communication and unlawful pressure. To ensure transparency, the National Institute of Standards and Technology would develop guidelines for logging these communications, and a centralized portal would track interactions between federal agencies and private platforms.
Another accountability measure is House Resolution 9136, the No Taxpayer Bailouts for Insurrectionists Act of 2026. This bill restricts federal funds for legal settlement agreements involving high-ranking government officials, their families, political appointees, and individuals convicted of crimes related to the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack.
It specifically prohibits federal payments toward the settlement in the case of Trump versus Internal Revenue Service. Any other settlement involving a covered person that exceeds $50,000 must undergo rigorous congressional reporting and receive certification of legality and ethical compliance from the Department of Justice Inspector General. The Government Accountability Office would also conduct a study to ensure expenditures adhere to federal appropriations law.
For federal employees, House Resolution 9261, the Comprehensive Paid Leave for Federal Employees Act, proposes a significant expansion of paid family and medical leave benefits across the legislative branch, the Postal Service, and executive agencies.
This expansion covers recovery from pregnancy loss, failed adoption or surrogacy arrangements, and fertility-related medical events. It also introduces specific provisions for employees or their family members who are victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, or sex trafficking. It establishes a work obligation requirement and outlines certification procedures for these leave requests.
Next, let us look at land preservation and public spaces. House Resolution 9148, the Scipio Jones House Assessment Act, directs the Secretary of the Interior to conduct a special resource study of the Scipio A. Jones House in Little Rock, Arkansas.
The study will evaluate its national significance and potential for designation as a National Historic Landmark or as an addition to the Little Rock Central High School National Historic Site. The bill mandates looking at preservation alternatives and cost estimates, but explicitly prohibits the consideration of federal land acquisition. The report must be submitted to Congress within 3 years of receiving funding.
Along the coast, House Resolution 9325, the Lone Star Coastal National Recreation Area Act, proposes a new unit within the national park system to conserve, protect, and promote the natural, cultural, and recreational resources of the upper and middle Texas Gulf Coast.
It establishes the Lone Star Coastal Partnership, comprising federal, state, local, and private stakeholders, to oversee an integrated resource management plan. A key part of this bill is that participation is entirely voluntary. It relies on cooperative agreements with willing landowners and explicitly prohibits the use of eminent domain or condemnation to acquire land.
And to maintain our existing public lands, House Resolution 9250, the Great American Outdoors Act 250, aims to modernize and maintain infrastructure across the National Park Service, the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Bureau of Land Management, the Forest Service, and the Bureau of Indian Education ahead of America's 250th anniversary.
It establishes the America's Legacy Restoration Fund, financed through energy development revenues and private donations, to address deferred maintenance projects like repairing structures, trails, and public access points. It mandates strict oversight, requiring annual project lists for Congress, and prioritizes public health, safety, and accessibility. It also prohibits using these funds for land acquisition or employee bonuses.
Finally, we have two bills targeting surrogacy arrangements. House Resolution 9132, the Preventing International Surrogacy Exploitation Act, prohibits foreign nationals from entering into or enforcing surrogacy contracts within the United States.
Proponents argue that the current system allows foreign entities, including those from adversarial nations, to obtain citizenship for children who are then raised abroad, which could create long-term national security risks and immigration loopholes. The bill would invalidate these surrogacy agreements, impose criminal penalties of up to 10 years in prison for brokers, and restrict foreign parents from obtaining immigration benefits through these contracts. Custody disputes would be resolved based on the best interests of the child under state law.
House Resolution 9131, the Protecting Kids from Creeps Act, also addresses surrogacy. It prohibits surrogacy agencies and their employees from knowingly or recklessly facilitating surrogacy contracts involving registered sex offenders.
This bill carries severe criminal penalties, including mandatory minimum prison sentences of 10 to 20 years for violations. It renders any such surrogacy agreement void and unenforceable. Non-compliant agencies would face administrative consequences, including the revocation of their 501c3 tax-exempt status and a ban on federal grant funding, while the Attorney General could pursue civil penalties. Like the other surrogacy bill, custody disputes would be resolved solely based on the child's best interests under state law.
That covers our major bills for today. As we wrap up, what should our listeners watch out for?
Keep an eye on how these national security measures, particularly the biotechnology restrictions in House Resolution 9102 and the Arctic security provisions in Senate Bill 4708, progress through their respective committees. We should also watch for the funding of the America's Legacy Restoration Fund as the nation approaches its 250th anniversary.
Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in to Capital Catch-Up.
See you next time.